Everyone has something to share, in either wisdom, story, or logic, and it's clearly amazing to hear all the differing missing links discovered by people, unique to their own journeys, and in how they have come to discover them. Together, we can help to build a bigger picture for a better future, for a brighter tomorrow. Let's stand united. Let's remove the veils, and let's create a new world together. Are you that missing link? Join Jesse Hale on the Missing Link Talk Show as he helps to unveil the mystery through the unique wisdom and store of others.
3, 2, 1.
Welcome everybody here back to the Missing Link. We are excited and honored for our 500th milestone interview to have someone was here right from the beginning on interview number 2 and number 3. Someone who is a former Hollywood film producer and financial system analyst turned entrepreneur and advocate for abused children. His 7 feature films are distributed today in over 150 countries on platforms such as Amazon, Apple TV, Roku, and Tubi, among others. Since 2008, Mr. Rice films have featured stories that contain social issues rarely shown in Hollywood films. John's personal journey to heal from abusive childhood inspired him to seek creative and compassionate solutions for a new paradigm based on compassion, empathy, forgiveness, and unconditional love with the deepest humility. Welcome back here to the Missing Link, my friend John Paul Rice. How are you doing, brother?
Hey, Jesse. Thank you so much for having me back on. It's a pleasure to see your bright and smiling face.
Nice to see your face as well. We've had, numerous phone chats over the years, chatted about what's going on in life, and it's good to actually see your face here again because we got to spend quite a few hours on the stream when we were talking for the first 2 interviews. So Why don't you start off with telling us about yourself, about your journey, maybe what part of the world you're in, what part of the world you grew up in, anything about your background or education or about the film industry, anything that you wanted to share with us here today, especially if people are hearing you here for the first time.
Certainly. So my life was pretty much unconventional in the sense that I grew up in a highly dysfunctional home. Of course, many people could say that they grew up in a dysfunctional home, and I'm not trying to distinguish myself here, but my childhood was really a nightmare that was normalized. And I spent the majority of my youth in my early years in and out of a mental hospital for a period of a couple of months. I'd been suicidal and depressed, didn't know why. And pretty much for the majority of my life, I'd been trying to find out what happened to me and why I had the life that I did, which I didn't realize had been pretty much living in the dark night of the soul for 45 years. In spite of that, I was a child who was extremely talented in the arts. I could draw, I could paint at a higher creative level than a lot of children. At least that was what was noticeable by teachers. I just had a mind to see things in ways that a lot of people didn't, and I do attribute that a lot to my trauma and having more of an abstract view of things. I was not very successful in school. When I had lawyers that supported me, I thrived. I was a person that you would pay to come in and do a job at, let's say, a bank or a sales company. And for example, at 17 years old, I went to work for my dad, selling a product that he had in Home Depot in a test market in Atlanta for 20 stores. And I came in at 17 years old with no background in marketing or advertising or even sales. And I ended up growing his account in Home Depot from about, let's say, a couple $100,000 a year to $4.5 million. I developed it all myself as I went along. I was able to intuit things. And this is me now looking back. This wasn't me at that time. I was just functioning at the level that I was at. It enabled me to get on the set of Remember the Titans, which is where I got my film career started while I was going to college. I was a very bad student in college. I didn't finish college, never did, never went back. I took everything I had and I went out to LA with $500 in my pocket, a credit card, and a floor to sleep on, and ended up making a career out of producing and in the financial services industry, where I tripled my salary in about 9 years, with basically just learning and being able to figure out things in my head. I could do problem solving without, I didn't know how to code a computer, but I could read and decipher functions and codes in relation to where they mapped in a system. So I had a highly analytical mind out of survival. I had an experience in Hollywood of 19 years that gave me, and when I say Hollywood, I mean Los Angeles. Most of that time was occupied by the film industry. I learned a lot about the business. I learned a lot about marketing, sales, distribution. Way Hollywood that is presented now and known now is much different than the one that I knew at that time. So it's kind of coming out on the other side now, and looking back, I can see a lot of things that I didn't see back then that were also normalized for me because of my childhood, and where my abuse was in abuse that fits with a lot of the narcissism that's out there. However, just to say this very clearly, not everybody who's abused becomes a narcissist themselves, or a psychopath, or, you know, these kinds of things. What it means is that you're scarred with that, and you're ignorant of it, and you don't realize, you're blind to see who people really are, who could be using you. And I think that's the majority of the world. In fact, I would say that our innermost defensive child that wants to be loved and validated gives itself over to the powers of someone else to define for them what reality is, and ultimately control them and make them codependent. So this whole thing, my whole life's experience and the reflection on it, have given me enormous wisdom. And when I say wisdom, it turns into solutions that are from the heart. So they are not ones that, you know, he's a millionaire or, you know, he's going to save us, or he's going to go run, you know, an AI that'll be good for us. It's like going back to taking the most complex things and then making them as simple as possible to understand and integrate, rather than having to know all of this knowledge and all of the details. It's trying to find the universal themes in everything, the metaphors in everything, in all time and space, history, present, and future, and being able to see what the common themes are and denominators are. The other thing is, in certain respects, I guess I'll say this: I'm not a psychologist, nor am I a therapist, but self-examination that I have been blessed with, in the sense, has given me the greatest insight into where although there are distinctions between everyone who is unique, we see the fundamental drives in almost every single person, the expressions of which are based on the distortions of their senses, and therefore change the perception of that person and drive their beliefs. So it's getting out of the head and the mind of thoughts and information and knowledge, and going into the heart wisdom, which is eternal, universal, and can't really be proven. It shows up everywhere in everyone's life, past, present, and future. Part of that journey for me, I guess you could say, if you journey or path, was to put an end to my bloodline's trauma. And how I would do that is the discovery of a lifetime where I ended up risking my life. Not at the time when I did that Instagram live 3 years ago in August about Hollywood, which is where some of your guests or audience may know me from, as I did an Instagram live in August of 2020 that was on the censorship of our movie A Child's Voice on Amazon. It had unpublished the film, so you couldn't watch it anymore for free or even pay for it. and in the United States and some other countries. And I did a live that day, and I sent it to a couple of my friends, and it just went frenetically all over the world. I think by the time the video was 38 minutes long, and I think the last time I stopped counting, it was 200 million people had seen it around the world. It had been translated into 5 or 6 different languages. And then on TikTok, under certain searches, under my name and Hunger Games producer, which is not what I said I was and not what I am, but people use that to as clickbait. That clip has been viewed over 4 billion times.
Wow.
And having to overcome my fear of being killed, fear of dying, brought back my near-death experience as a child. At least that's what I've come to understand. And it proved to me that God exists. I found Jesus. If I had ever had any questions or doubts about a creator of heaven and earth, I found the presence of that God in my heart at my darkest moment in my life. And it was the most terrifying moment of my life to have the entire reality of your world collapse around you, where there's no trust anymore. It's like if you're just sitting here and all of a sudden none of this appears to be real. Everything is fake. It's completely devoid of anything to secure yourself to in your mind. And you're literally in a state of turbulent paranoia while your body is convulsing. And I remember it well. It was 2 years ago, and it was at nighttime, and I was laying down, and whatever came over me, it collapsed my reality, and this convulsing in my legs began. And then I remember hearing the voice of this woman that I had been talking to said, "Hold on to me, John." And I did. And then I asked for Jesus to come into my heart and take this terror and fear from me, because it was horrific. And within 2 seconds, white light came through top of my crown into my heart, and all of that fear dissipated within seconds. And placebo effect or otherwise, it saved my life. I'm just saying, on the base level, there is nothing in my imagination that could have created that and made that as a thought construct in my head to come in and give me the presence of basically what faith is, which is the knowing that other potentials exist, but that can't be seen yet, that are not known today. And that's where faith is, when you talk about walking by faith and not by sight. So it's not being able to know what you don't know, but at the same time, knowing that there is a being that loves you more than any human being could ever love you in this world. But not to say that you can't be loved by someone else as a representation of it. It's just that that's the first being that you always were, are, and will be throughout all of time. And that what we're all connected to this way. So anyway, that's kind of my story a little bit. And then we can get into what I'm doing now, which is a lot different from my past, but it's the culmination of everything that I've been working on my entire life. Oh, hang on. You're muted.
Maybe you could start off with just telling us about what your religious faith or background was before that moment, when you got to that place, and maybe share that story before we get a little bit more into current, because I think that would be good to just show a little bit about the background before you came to this, this moment in time in your life.
Sure. So I was raised Catholic. I participated in most of the sacraments up until I didn't do reconciliation or whatever. No, I did reconciliation. I'm trying to think of the one that you do in 7th or 8th grade. I don't even remember anymore, these rites of passage that they have for you. I left the Catholic Church probably at 17, 16 years old because I encountered a not so great group that did not treat me with respect. Then I kind of always kept Jesus there, but I would call it in my hip pocket. So I'd have, like there were quotes, like footprints quote that I had when I was a young man in my college dorm. That was the one about walking along the sand and the beach, and 2 sets of footprints, and then there was only one. And he asked the Lord why, and he said, "Those are the moments that I carried you." That always hits me. But then there was also the Sermon on the Mount, which was so beautiful and profound. It's the way to live. It's actually it's sort of like, here's the 10 commandments, but then let's expand upon what it means to be a human being in all that is true, which is what Christ is, in the sense of the poor and the suffering are the same as us. They're just different versions of us in a different time and space. And I would say that for most of my life, I remained agnostic, did not really know what that meant. Wasn't atheist. It always distinguished that. It's like, agnostic to me was, I don't know. But I think that's a modern day version, whereas agnostic would be more of this inner dwelling, inner place that is beyond this world and beyond the thoughts and the information alone. That is your presence, your being in the spaces that are quiet. So really in 2019, I had an experience that I can't describe in full words, but it was a release of all of the traumas from all of I did a meditation on each energy center. And as I did that, it was one of Joe Dispenza's earliest, the blessing of the energy centers, about a 40-minute meditation. And I did that, and my body came online, became alive for the very first time, where blood was flowing and my heart was pumping, and it felt like my heart was blooming. And I was releasing all of this trauma inside, all of this crying, but I was also knowing that there was a joy coming through at the same time, which was that I knew I was coming through this. Somehow, intuitively, I knew that I had begun to change. And it showed me a glimpse as to what life could be. I immediately, that day, and we can talk about these things, but I immediately ceased to have any more addiction to coffee, wine, or pornography. And it was like instantaneous. And I got up the next day, and people were like looking at me. I was glowing. My skin was clear, my face, everything. There were no lines. I went outside, and there's a rose bush like 30 feet away. I could smell it like it was up in my brain. It was so rich, so full. And there was a thing that came over me. It's like, oh my God, this is what it's like to be a child, unfiltered, without your trauma. Your trauma is blocking you from your senses. The distortions of these sensations are blocked in your trauma. And when you clear them, it's like all of a sudden the world opens up. It opens up into a state of joy, that there's a joy to being alive. There's a true joy to breathing air. And I know that sounds so simple, and maybe people don't find that useful, but it's like when people talk about honoring themselves, it's like this gift that you're given is a unique gift, that as a soul, you've been given this gift in this time to use these hands and use this matters and all of it to communicate your very being to the rest of the world, to make into matter, using the forces of God within you to create something beautiful that is eternal and is a representation of the divine. And when I look at other industries, it's the distortion, it's the inversion of those things that they still use as a vessel to carry the message, because we're the real value, we're the real authentic self. The best advice anybody ever gave me before I went out to LA was be yourself, John. And I didn't understand who I was until I found myself, and then realized that all I was doing all this time was searching for that person in other people, but it was always in me. And it's always in them too. And I, for me, about religion and spirituality, first of all, I don't believe in religious dogmatic views and ideologies that have to distinguish themselves in opposition of others. Because at the highest levels, if you want to look at it more in duality, the Vatican controls pretty much 1/3 of the world. They've got the bank, there's the city of London, and there's the DC, and then there's the Vatican. And the Vatican controls all the religions as well. Now, you could say, well, not my pastor. And it's like, no, that's not what I'm talking about. It has to do with distinguishing traditions, religions, and stories that are maintained over time. When you go back 1,500 years, it was the church and the feudal system, and you paid your way up to the king in order to get the blessings of the king, which was controlled by the church. Then they switched it around 500 years ago and did Western civilization. But what they gave it away for free, But now you were a nothing thing in a little pale blue dot in this vast cosmos. So have at it. There wasn't any. We don't have to have like a moral grounds of honoring a higher being. It's now sort of like, well, there is a higher being, but you're a little tiny dot and you're insignificant. So it's just how they switch it around. But on the bigger front, if you look at Vatican and let's just say the Jewish faith and Israel specifically, without getting into the details, you have one that's waiting on the return and one that's still waiting for the real thing. And so when the one returns, the question will be, is that if that's to take place, however that's to take place, that it will be perceived totally different. And that's by design. So when I looked at all of this and I said, you know what, there is waking up and then there's taking action. And if we do nothing, as a spiritual sovereign being, a soul, however you want to define yourself, before the person comes into being, you are you are all of these beautiful things. And the world, as a child, you are all of those beautiful things, but you're in a world of knowledge that can be corrupted and has been. And it uses duality of opposite sides to create the virtue in both, in the good versus the good, lining up against each other, but perceived as good versus evil, versus looking at Ephesians 6:12 and knowing that these are powers and principalities in forces and dimensions that are beyond the flesh that are influencing all of this. And it's hard to be a human being. It's very difficult to be a human being, especially in this time, and to have survived. So when I look at religion, if I look at spirituality, if I look at what my upbringing was, the whole sum total of all of it is to bring all of the good and make it new again. Take all the traditions, the eternal traditions, not what's trending, not what is being defined as today, or this is how we need to look at this, and this is that expert, that authority outside of you, outside of your own intuition. You will always be righteous, and you will always have a need to be led. You will never put that for which you are passionate about to good use, because you will always seek to fix the problem versus to create the solution that is eternal, that is self-evident, doesn't require debate, doesn't require me to go out and find a bad daddy to go up against. This is where we are right now. A lot of us are codependent children of alcoholic parents, still begging and screaming and thinking that by shaming and guilting and calling out the perpetrators and their BS, it's going to make them change. They cannot change. They're an immutable object that is going to crash and burn in that car that's going down the highway at 150 miles an hour with mom and dad who've been drinking all day, and we're the kids in the back seat and we're screaming at them, stop, stop, stop. They can't stop. They can't change who they are until a greater force comes in and takes them out. It could be their own arrogance, or it could be military. I don't know. But playing the game of predict it and who's awake, who's not, who's I guess what it really comes down to is like, you don't have to go out and prove anything to anybody anymore. You have to start from a place of humility to go, there are so many things I don't know, so many things that I was wrong about. Having forgiveness for yourself for what you didn't know is the introduction to humility. And the ability to communicate that to your children and other people who you love and care for is your greatest superpower, because it's not what's being offered out there. There is no care in that world out there that they offer you. None. And that's why people are going insane, because they're looking for love in all the wrong places, and all they're finding are things to hate. So what we're talking about in spirituality, in our upbringings, it's taking all of our traditions, all that was eternally true. I want to share this one thing with you only because this is what I'm talking about. This right here is a crest for my family. Okay. And there's a meaning into all of this, but on the back of this is about my family. And I just want to read this because this is everybody. All right. So there's a coat of arms and there's a crest for the family origin. But here's it. The ancient family of Rice came from Wales, claiming to be descended from the ancient Celts. The early Celts found refuge from the invading Saxons and Danes during the 5th century in the mountain districts. Their customs and language are still honored today. The name of Rice is the angelicized version of the Welsh name Rise. The earliest history records a Thomas Rice of Carmarthen. He was an active supporter of Henry Tudor, who became Henry VII in 1485. William Rice settled in the Shire of Buckingham in 1555. His grandson Edmund Rice immigrated to Massachusetts in 1638. One of his descendants, Amos Rice, was one of the Minutemen and was captain during the Revolutionary War. Descendants of the Rice family can be found throughout our country, prominent in the arts and professions as well in the world of business. I didn't know anything about this in my childhood or my young adulthood until a few years ago. And everything that's here, regardless of this story, these traits are true in me. They're true in my father. They were true in my mother, and they were true in all who came before me. And what is eternally true is what's in you. There isn't anything about you that is any different than what you truly are. And what you truly are is there for you to discover. That's what being a human being is in this world, is to find your meaning and your purpose in it. The world as defined for you will take that and define it for you in all ways, including when the system collapses and people have no more imagination and creativity because they've been scared to death with all these threats. They will subjugate their right hemisphere, their divine connection to the heart and the mind here. They will subject their right hemisphere of their brain, which is their imagination, their creativity, their feelings, their intuition, their love, and they will give it over to AI to answer it for them. That's what we're up against. Mechanical minds that have been conditioned and despiritualized on a mass level, not just now, not just in the time before now, not just 20 years ago, 40 years ago, or 100 years ago. This is ancestral traumas of 5 to 14 generations in every single person's DNA being awakened to find and discover who and what you truly are, without having to make yourself in opposition of all these other people who are false to you. Knowing what's false is not enough. It's trying to find what's true in here. This is the hardest. This whole test, this is a place, a trap for our mind, our body, and our souls. And if we free ourselves from those bonds that have been created for us by going past the world of knowledge, going into a higher state of divinity, you'll eclipse all of AI, guaranteed. In fact, AI should answer what we conclude is the answer. It should come up with that is the right solution. That is the utilitarian solution. That is not only with good intentions, but the results bear out over time. Not a utopia, but a majority of people that can then come back and help the minority of people who are still suffering that can't reach that, but can be given the care. When you give care, you heal people. When you heal yourself, you heal the world. This is what I had to learn. My entire world has been healed by removing myself from the world and from all of my beliefs could be challenged. All of what I believe to be eternally true could be challenged, and it would stand the test of time. It wouldn't be lost if I tested it. That's why it's a tradition. That's why it's eternally true, because it stands the test of time in every circumstance. It takes higher leaps of faith because, again, it's one of those things that you don't know, but believe is possible, and your reality has instantly changed. This is what they don't want people in mass having the ability and the capacity to do, which is why they're jamming everything in so hard right now with all the definitions of things and distinctions and bad behaviors. And all we're doing is we're yelling and shaming each other to try to make us stop acting the way that we've been programmed to do. And it's a fool's errand at this point. I'm saying it out loud very clearly. There is nobody who can come in and clean this up in a position of authority today under the current regime. And even with a new person coming into that regime to stop it, it's not stoppable. What you are, however, is you can change. They cannot. So if you can change, everybody can change who can change. And that is the majority. The malleableness of people is where they're going to get them on all of their ignorances. And they're going to increase the threats, believe me, because they're creating it. They're creating their reality through us who believe them to be the reality that we have to go and fight against. That's what takes all of our energy over here to destroy it and stop it. And certainly you do need to stop some of the advancements of things that are coming, but other things are human history, their behaviors, their psychology. You can't stop how somebody feels. As everybody knows, based on all of what we have witnessed during these last 3 years, you can't change people's minds and how they feel about things just because you present them with facts. So there is another level to this game, which is care. You have to go to a higher level beyond the duality, beyond the arguments of sides. It is all there in Christ. It has to do with him inviting the people in, invitation to come see what I'm creating over here. Come see my home. Come see my food. Experience feelings. The gift of that, authenticity. Your authentic self is what gives that. It is the antidote to all of this madness. Because the truth is, you're giving them another potential. You're not giving them Coke or Pepsi. You've got all these other potentials over here that exist that don't require a big show or waiting for permission for somebody to tell you that it's okay to do it. And that is like our child abuse, our narcissistic child abuse system is got us by the balls in this way. That people are literally going, I didn't know you could do that. They needed somebody to tell them that it was okay. And to some extent, you could rail against those people all day and say, my God, you're clueless. But if I care about that person, one of those people is my family member that I just described, by the way. And that's a person who stuck up for me and loved me in a time when I needed something. And they're blind. And it goes, okay, what can I do? I can't argue. I can't change who they are. I can't change what happened to them. But I can actually affect their lives now in the time and space that I have, with the time that I have, with the time that they have, and I can give them something that the rest of the world can't. And let me say this, the stories, the truth, the facts, all that'll come out, sure, but they're going to feel the truth through me. I don't have to make an argument to them. I don't have to tell them. I can show them that I'm not any of the things that are defined for them out there. And then maybe one day they ask, well, what do you think about that? Well, do you want to hear that? And they go, yeah. Guess what? I've built up all my credibility with them, not to pull the string, not to pull the punch on them, but to actually look at them in the eye and say, I really love you and I care for you. And they already know that because they felt it. I'm not trying to argue with them saying, no, you idiot, I love you. Stop. It's not going to work that way. It never has. And anyway, so my religion is people at this point. And I'm not saying, oh, without Jesus, no. I'm not, Jesus is my way. I'm not telling I know people get Jesus is the way, the truth, the life. You need to repent. I am not here to preach that message. I'm here to say, I've lived it. I've lived my own adventure, and I found God in this time. Thank God I did. And however it came to be that I was blessed to have the ability to speak and reason and understand, and the heart that my little boy has always had and held on to for dear life in the darkest of places that I was in, that I didn't even know the danger I was in. It kept me alive. And I don't know how I'm alive, but I've been allowed to be alive. And therefore, I'm going to do everything I can from here till my last dying breath to be of service to other people and to make possible the impossible that seems impossible, and to show another way, that there is another way, there is another possibility that exists inside of you, and it starts with you. It can't be from some person you need to follow in order to listen to what they say you should do. We have to be, what is it? I will make you fishers of men. You have to teach people how to fish and nourish themselves. We need training wheels, in a sense, to take back what was consented away. But here's the thing, it's not going to be an all or nothing game. It's going to happen in steps. And I have seen this psychological operation within psychological operations play out, and you're going to have divided territories over time that emerge because collectives will recoagulate around universal ideas. People living in cities are going to have a vastly different experience than people living out in rural areas and country. And that divide will grow greater over time because of the need in cities to get hold of the situations that are being inflamed right now. There's going to be an overcorrection after the violence explodes. And everybody says, we can't do this ever again. And they say, well, city council, well, mayor, what do we do? Well, we have this billionaire. It's glad you asked, because I saw this great thing that employers can do now, and downloading an app on your phone, and you call in and it can read whether you're telling the truth or not. Isn't that great? I've got greater surveillance. I'm refunding the police. Now, we can't get as many human beings on the streets anymore because they're far more dangerous today than they were before. But we've got the technology to scan people's eyes, read who they really are, and know if they're a danger right away. Well, that sounds great. Yeah, I'll sign up for that. Oh, yeah, well, we've also got this digital wallet that we want you to use with the new central bank digital currencies, because after all, identity theft has become a real problem with all these hackers and these blackouts and this terrorism, because we created a world war. But we don't want you to think about the conditions that we helped create these problems for. We have the answer for you. They did exactly the same thing with COVID. What they did was they stopped your life, they shut you down, they broke up all your energetic connections, destroyed all of your illusions, raised up the issue of mental wellness on a level that has never been seen at this level globally before, and normalized all of it. And they're going to redefine all of it for everyone. Neurodiversity is now going to include complex PTSD, which basically means that This is just an effect of being alive now, that you have complex PTSD. Who has this to cope and manage with it while perpetuating the stigma and then gaslighting everybody who doesn't. That you get what I mean. It just goes on from here. You can't argue that world anymore. You have to look at the bigger picture of what world does everybody want to live in? A safe world for all children, including the one in you. And if you create that, it's everybody will step out of those threats and into the one that is possible. So anyway, I answered your question in multiple ways, and then I kind of went off a little bit, but I want to go to the next question you have, or if you have a follow-up one.
Yeah, this is a question as you were, started off. It comes from my girlfriend Angeline in the audience here on our Facebook. She says, "What are some of the best tools and guidance you have found for healing?"
Well, for my own, on a practical level, I go for walks in nature. I have used psychedelics now, not LSD or anything. I've used plant-based medicines, but I usually use the Delta 8 because that's the legal. The 2008 Farm Bill made a lot of things possible with CBD. Meditation, I do the meditation now in nature, so I don't really have to meditate all that much. I believe in grounding. People talk about grounding all the time now, but really getting your feet and the electromagnetic fields in your body in alignment to discharge bad negative energy and moods. Going to bed early, not looking at your phone constantly, not going on your telegrams and looking at everyone's posts, and finding where your outrage is that day that you need to tell everybody about, because I had that problem forever. There's, for everything that I've ever posted on social media, I think there's probably 5 others that I withhold just because I'm going, man, when is enough for me and for everybody else? And if you really want to put, I guess here's the thing. If you need it spelled out, and I'm not saying that this is a detrimental position, but if you really want it spelled out for you what this is about, you should go today on the United People Foundation. I think you've put it in the unitedpeople-foundation.org, and look at the Declaration of Peace and read over, I think it's the 12 points. It's in multiple languages. Do that today. Don't wait. And even I would consider signing it. Now, the thing that, and when I say consider signing, it's not like a big commitment, but it's actually you're changing reality right there by reading that and agreeing to it. And the United People Foundation is run by Ronald Bernard, by the way. He's not the only one. There's a lot of people there now. Ronald Bernard is the former banker who gave his testimony in 2017, is actually the reason why I did A Child's Voice. He was the insider who saw all of this stuff. And I got involved with them to help launch their new financial platform this year, which we can go into that if you want to talk about it, because it really is something amazing. And it's going to be the start of many great things over time to rebuild the world away from this we'll call it mechanical, great reset, psychopathic or psychopathy based system that is about stripping the being of all their sovereignty and making technology more invasive to control the body and the behavior and the mind, and ultimately cut them off from God and imitate them for their eternity. That's
Inversion. Yeah, inverted. They've inverted everything. They've inverted the mind. They've inverted basically all symbols and signs to make people so confused and divided. And I think it's all inversion of what our true self, where we're supposed to be in our natural sense state, where we're not thinking, we're just being and doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is the battle that they are waging against the forces of God. I know that sounds so big in general, but it really is in all ways. So this is, people ask, well, what do you do? Some of the things I read Alice Miller's books, Joe Dispenza's work, and the Heart Math Institute kind of gave me insight onto what that heart coherence. But what you really want to do in the fundamental way is do hemisync. If you look that term up, is talked about by the CIA actually years ago in documents. But the hemisync is to harmonize the left and the right hemispheres of your brain. And so that you're not having to hold deep contradictions that are rooted in, we would call it trauma or blocks. And it's really about self-examination of your anger and your hatred and being honest about that in yourself. I think that for a lot of people, the language is in the mind and the understanding is in here, but they've never really sounded it out before with somebody that they felt safe with, that they could say, like I did with my partner. She's an amazing person. Talked about my problem with pornography. Talked about my addictions to lust in that sense, about, there's like being able to say it made it possible for me to heal versus having to feel guilty and shameful about having a regression or something. But in steps and stages, it was about reestablishing trust, because it wasn't about like the person's bad behavior. It was like there was a willingness in both people to get up every day and go, okay, I love you and I care for you and I see who you are, not who you could be, but who you are. And it took a while to get that with one person, but I'm saying to everyone, fall in love with something in this life, really, like truly committed to making you a better human being. And I want to say this thing about the Bee of Joy and the United People Foundation. So let's just talk about this. This is a new financial system that's backed by gold and silver. It's a parallel currency, not a digital one. We'll get to that. What this is going to enable is remarkable, because you're going to be able to bring your fiat currency onto the platform. You're going to get an equal exchange 1-to-1 ratio, meaning it holds all of its value in that URA coin. Now, in the second phase, what they're going to do, and this is this September when it launches, the banking services with the payment services. This is going to be the awesome part. You're going to be able to offload your fiat currency in over 204 countries. You're going to be able to pay your bills, pay your mortgage, be able to do taxes with your financial information. So you're going to be able to transact on this platform and not lose any value when you empty it out into the fiat currency system. So it's a bridge, but it's also, and this is the second and third part that's really awesome. Right now, and I would tell everybody to go on, I have it in the link there, you have it down there, the Bee of Joy, get on the Bee of Joy and look at becoming a shareholder, okay, of this bank. Now think about this. I'll be a shareholder, you'll be a shareholder, Jesse be a shareholder. Let's just say this. We buy a share at 105 euros today. It's just one. It's about $100 roughly, around that. 110, 112. You buy a share today, and what you're going to do with that share, imagine it's like putting down a deposit on a future crowdfunding venture that you're going to get involved with other shareholders. So today at the ground floor, if you get in and we get, let's say, a drop in the bucket is what? 10,000 people in a world of 7 billion. So we get 10,000 people at 105 euros each. That's about $1 million that we will have to be able to appropriate funds that set up financing entities for mortgages, where we go out and find a distressed property, or we have, let's say there's a mall, there's an abandoned mall. There's going to be a lot of abandoned malls in the next couple of years, right? We have the financial leverage to create that funding in that entity. we can go out and buy properties to convert over into affordable housing without the government or without Section 8. So we can create the world that we want to live in by having the value and the people who are making all of these changes happen, not corporations and not chairs of boards and not Wall Street and not Chase Bank and their new managers. We're able to actually create the change that we want. Clean water, clean drinking water, irrigation water. You have people all over this world, and I have a Rolodex of people who are into organic farming, electroculture, right? To grow crops and to use natural energy around here, free energy, to be able to provide for themselves. So what we're going to do is we start another entity there, and we have a couple of shareholders getting together, forming the entity to create an organic farming solution that could be exported all over the world. And we create the blueprint and bring the value to it because it's from people's lived experiences who have done this for years. We bring in all the subject matter experts and we put them on a marketplace of ideas. So you could run your business off of there, do all of your bills and your payments, and then have your affordable housing, have your clean drinking water, have all of the organic farming that you want that is being distributed and shared internationally and creating real wealth elsewhere. So this is not about a get-rich-quick scheme. It's about creating scalable solutions that deliver and return profits to the bank to be what? Reinvested by the shareholders back out into other scalable solutions. So we can do education, we can do employment, we can create employment entities to create sustainable businesses that don't use top-heavy methods to suck up all this money. And here's the best part. There is zero interest on this platform. Zero. No interest. And Ronald and this other guy, Michael Sabe, and there's a couple of others, are all working together to roll this out this fall because we know that the financial system, as it continues, is going to get more predatory and more invasive. Even when it collapses, even if they transition to a digital coin, it's going to have more controls on it than you're going to like. The odds are very high for that. So what we want to do is we want to say, you know what? We're not here to fight against them. We're here to create this over here. And we're going to create in our own space now. We're going to do all the different things that we all love and know that actually work. And here's what I'm going to tell people. Look, this is an actual working platform right now. It is going to go into phase 2 where you're going to be able to issue payments to each other, not just on the blockchain, but also outside of it. And you're going to be able to transact with your marketplace on there. But here's how I look at it. And this is about the difference between a missionary and a mercenary. You will find for you, like, you basically, people vote with their feet, time, and money. And so if this is valuable to you, then it'll be valuable to you. If it's not, you're not giving money and putting your vote on something to go, you go do it. You go make it happen for me and get back to me when you know we've got. No, you're being invited to be a shareholder in a bank to make decisions about the bank's money and where it gets invested. There is no other place in the world that allows you to do that. So I'm putting my time into these solutions to change the world in fundamental ways that will be eternally there for the legacy long after I'm gone. And that's why I'm doing it, because I realize that I've been given a blessing to be alive. And I look at the divisions that are going on and they're all artificial. They're just, it's psychological imprinting and programming. And I'll tell you one key factor to all of it. Go back to 9/11 to now and just go and try to retell the entire story year by year of all the events that have happened. You couldn't do it. You couldn't tell that story in chronological order because it's all over the place in your head, and then you'd have to remember things. Well, that's the point, folks. It's about feelings. The same way Hollywood uses movies to elicit feelings and imprint agendas, it's the same thing. It's all about feelings and manipulation to get you into a belief system that has no factual basis, a story that can't be told that is agreed upon. So we're going into a world of beliefs. We're going into a world of everything, everywhere, all at once at the same time. And it's going to be divided by multiple timelines and consciousnesses. I saw this a couple of years ago. I'm starting to see it now. They can take politics, culture, society, spirituality, and sexuality, and they can create divisions on all of these because they're intrinsically tied into our psyche, and they've been programmed into us through knowledge and deception for generations. So it's like we're just coming up all together into this new world, but what that new world is going to look like is anybody's guess. And if you're sitting by the sidelines and you're waiting, it's all just going to happen to you. This is where I'm realizing that what I have to do in my time and my space is I'm going to set up a consulting, and I don't like to use the word consulting, but that's really the only way to do it. I want to sit down and say, ask me anything. I want to help you with your idea. I want to help you scale it. I want to help you build it. I've got a network of people. So these are subject matter experts, all these great people that I've met like you have, that we can go, all right, if John Paul Rice can't work with me on the entrepreneurial, artistic, financial, maybe a little bit of psychological, but not as a therapist, because I have other people that do that. But what I can do is I can listen and do a free consultation for 15, 20 minutes to listen to what you have to say, think about it. You tell me what you're looking for, and I'll let you know authentically and truly if I can actually help you. And then we can engage on a pay scale for time. And the time has got to be as valuable to you as it is to me. So it's not, no one is taking anything here. No one's going, oh, well, you wanted to pay me and I told you what I knew, but it really didn't help you. No, it's got to be trust. And so for me, it's like, if I can't help you, then what I'm going to do is bringing my network together in a diverse area of all of these skills. I may be able to refer you to somebody else. You don't have to pay me. You can work it out with them, or you can pay me and it'll pay for them. Like, it's just time, right? We're not here to make a lot of money. We're here to help people, send them on the way that they need to go. It's more than just information. It's a discussion. It's a conversation. It's about you. It's about you. And this conversation is about, who are you? Why are you here? It's not about woo-woo or, just being a spiritual being. It's like, okay, I'm going to focus on your needs and meet you where you're at, and then tell you the things from my own lived experience. Here are the things that I would avoid. Here are the things to go towards. Because if you're mission oriented and you're in your heart with this, and you have a passion to see this happen, then we need to get you in with a network of people that are supportive, that are doing these things and others that may also inspire you. So we're going to do a newsletter like once or twice a month with articles and information, not an overwhelming amount, but very specific to the person, the subscriber's needs, to say, I want to know more about organic farming. Let me have some resources on that. I want to know more about the new financial system and how I might be a banker in that. Those kinds of things, like really giving people options and choices for them to go out and take into their own lives and do with them what they want.
Sounds beautiful. So people can just invest $100 to be a part of, or 105 euros to be a part of this bank, and then it gives them an equal voting share, or what exactly does that do?
So let's say you could buy as many shares as you want, right? You could go in and buy 10,000 of them, but really you only still have one vote. So you may control more shares to distribute, but you're still only going to have one vote for each entity that you go to. It's not one vote, one time. It's one vote, one person. And then you can direct that money according to how you wish to. but yes, it's the way it's going to work is there could be, there could be 1 million shareholders if they're wanted. The key is it's not about how do you get 1 million people together. Well, you don't, but you get teams of people, and you say we're going to go and form this entity for mortgages and financing of homes and conversion of property. We're going to go over here and do this one for organic farming and all the materials. And we might have somebody who wants to create a starter pack that they could send you or give you a list of materials to go and source and buy, or through an affiliate program for a reduced cost. So what it would mean is that you and others get together on your calls together and decide on all of these entities that we have here, which one do we want to fund and for how much? And we may get a proposal from someone. We may have a proposal where somebody says, hey, I've got this plan and this idea that they'd normally have to go on GoFundMe or Kickstarter to get off, but we do it on the bank and we do it on the blockchain with the funding. And all of a sudden it opens it up to the international marketplace of everyone on there. Plus, it's also something like if you are, let's say you're a bartender. I'm just giving this example. You mix drinks. You're the mixologist. You're the alchemist. You're also you bring the crowd, right? But you want to be a greater bartender. You want to go out and create your own bartending program that can be replicated all over the world. Then you're the guy or the girl that's going to deliver that to people and that experience to people with your thumbprint on it. It's your original creation. It's not an imitation. It's the thing that you're good at. The skills that you have, you can level up in this game. And then you can distribute those things that you have expertise in that can't be learned in a book. Your lived experiences are your most treasured, valuable asset to being able to have wisdom and know what to do versus somebody who's just following the 10 steps to get it done. It's the meaning. It's the heart right here that's making that possible. Your imagination, your belief that it can happen, and all the potentials that exist. And with the shareholder, that's the same thing. You're going to be able to, you'll be able to enable people and have their dreams met while serving you in doing something that is a good steward of the earth. So it's a reciprocal shareholder relationship. You're creating things that everybody can use that are good and that succeed and create wealth for everybody else, including not just the bank or the shareholders, but for all people that wish to live in a world free of tyranny. So, but as a shareholder, I'm very excited about it because I want to put these teams together and these entities together to go out and create the funding entities that are going to make all of this and more happen. That's really my excitement in that. And then seeing how I'm going to help, people and friends and those who have been doing this really amazing work that's not getting noticed yet, because obviously there isn't anybody in the mainstream that's going to come over and say, hey, look, go do this, because it's going to bankrupt our chairman's portfolios. So what we're doing is we're pointing out that these things are already being done. They're not theories anymore.
So are you a creator and a founder, or did someone, pitch you the idea and then you just saw the vision and joined up on it?
You're talking about the Bee of Joy Bank? Yeah. It was something that I was aware of in 2018 when I first reached out to Ronald Bernard. I thought it was a great idea. And now I see it as a necessity. And I got involved this January and started working with their volunteer team. And we hold like a weekly or biweekly call every week to check in, and we have action items, and we're putting together pitch decks and other things so that when we go, more on a public campaign, we can have materials that people can look at when we're not there or we're not talking about it. There's a website and everything can go around, but we want to make it so user friendly that it becomes self-evident. Like, okay, you want to have an account, Here's how you do an account. You want to be a shareholder, you can do that as a shareholder. You can be a shareholder and an account holder. You want to be a shareholder and account holder and be on the marketplace and put your products on there or your services, you can do that. So those three things are interchangeable and all of them work within the piece. But the real magic is going to happen I would say within 6 months to a year after the launch this fall with the banking services and the payment systems, that you're going to see a massive transformation of scalability on that platform. And I just found it and I decided I wanted to volunteer. I was like, screw it. I want to do something this year different from a job.
If this, sparks the interest of, anyone, they wanted to do the same volunteering, being part of the team, investing that $100, where would they go? How would they contact? Who would they contact? What would they do? If it's something that they feel in alignment with?
So excellent question. So if you go to, so if you wanted to contact them and you wanted to get more information, you'd go to unitedpeople-foundation.org/contact. And it defaults into English. It's got Spanish, French, Dutch, and Netherlands. But they have a FAQ page. So most of the questions asked are already on there. But if you wanted to send them a message, you could ask a general question, or you can ask about an account, member certificate, payment, or URA account. You put your name, your email address, write them the message. It's got a little, I'm not a robot, and then you click submit. If you wanted to go on and get a certificate, right? So if you wanted to go to become an eternal membership certificate holder, you would go to unitedpeople-foundation.org/member certificates. And you would see kind of a page there that spells out for you what this actually means, what you're going to be able to do. And then you enter your name, your last name, your first last name, your email address, the country, the language, put some information in there. You set up a password, a company, and then you ask how much you want to put in the transfer. And then you go to payment and you click pay. And it's pretty fast. And you'll get an email with everything there. It'll tell you what, you'll probably be on the newsletter as well, or you can opt out of it. But the Eternal Membership Certificate holder is under the URA platform, but it's unitedpeople-foundation.org/member certificates. And you can even become a volunteer. If you don't have the money and you want to do something good, you can become a volunteer there and they'll be happy to have you. There's all sorts of different types of work to do. Some of it is, and when I say volunteer, it's a couple hours a day or a couple hours a week. And it's not, holding you against your will. You don't have to do it if you don't want to. If you want to volunteer or see what it's about, I do know they need some people in the marketing and amplification on social media. They're going to need that. They're also going to need people on the website development stage, because we're going to make the interface more sleek and simple and streamline that.
When you first came on, Angeline said, she loves your necklace. And then we just had Denise, I believe, say, John Paul, may you share what you're wearing around your neck? So yeah. It's definitely an interesting piece.
Yeah. So this is a piece I had in 2018. And it's a little tarnished in the middle there now, but this was Organite that was made by Jay Parker. Jay Parker is an SRA survivor, and he made this with his hands for me in 2018. It's got all the different earth stones, and then it's got aluminum shavings, and then there's brass and copper. And I wear it over my, between my throat and my heart chakra. I never really got into these things until I actually started learning about them, but it does harmonize the magnetic field in my heart and my voice. I don't go, well, I haven't actually tested it, but the first time I put it on, I felt a little weird. And I wear it for Jay because Jay Parker, if you want to look him up, he's at Center Path Radio. And He's also given a lot of lectures on his family and the dark occult. But Jay is somebody that is a dear brother to me. He saved my life. He really did, and he's given himself. Like, if you want one of these, from him. I think $50 donation, and he'll mail it to you for that $50 as well. Jay's a great guy, and he works off of donations. He's disabled, so he works at home. I met him in Philadelphia a couple of years ago. I had dinner with him, and he really paid the price big for what he went through. And he's a tough SOB, but he's one of the most gentle, sweetest men I've ever met. And so if you are to support Jay Parker or get one of these Orgonite, he also has the pyramids as well. He makes those by hand. So you're going to get a handcrafted one that he does himself. And every single one of these, like I wear this every day that I can.
Yeah, we love the Oregon, so here's a piece that we got as well. So
that's beautiful.
Yeah, that's very very good energy. So tell us about your movies. The movies you've been making, what movies, maybe what you're currently working on, maybe share with everyone, the stuff that's been passionate to you in your heart.
Mm-hmm. So I took a break this past year from producing films, so I'm not really in the business of doing that right now. It really wasn't my fullest passion. I always wanted to help young people, and what I mean by that is the inspiration, that seeing that little light bulb go off in their head, and then seeing that spark of imagination come through. And in film, I got to do that, but my movies, I did 7 films over 13 years. First one was called 1 Hour Fantasy Girl, and that was based on a true story about a young woman working, we'd say, as a dominatrix in a motel room, where for $150 an hour, she'll engage in any fantasy a man wants, as long as there's no sex, no nudity, and it's completely legal. So 1 Hour Fantasy Girl was really the first film I did, and I felt like I had said something about what real empowerment is, the power, the strength within you. In the world that she was in, she was stuck there and wanted to get out so she could invest in real estate and never have to work in that profession. And yet she's a tragic figure because she's trusting of people and seeking out love in a world of fantasy. It opened the eyes of a lot of people. Came out in 2009. It was a major, successful critical hit on the internet, and the financial crash had hit, so DVDs went down. Although we sold a lot of DVDs, and we were actually one of the top videos at that time on Amazon streaming service. We were in the top 200 to 300 movies of 40 to 60,000 on there, up there with The King's Speech and Brokeback Mountain in the drama category. So it's a really beautiful film. You can now see it on Roku, Tubi. There's multiple platforms now. You just got to look up 1 Hour Fantasy Girl, and I think there's multiple sites you can see it on. The other films I did, Mother's Red Dress, which was also later titled Memories of a Lost Love. That film deals with child abuse in the home between the mother and father and the child. It's not graphic in the sense that there's no, gratuitous abuse shown. It's pretty much implied, and there's some visual representation there. But it's really about a man who is struggling to remember what's real and what's imagined in him, and where that reality begins and ends. And he's trying to remember something that happened in the house where he grew up, while trying at the same time to start his own life with going to college. And I don't know if Angeline, she asked, sorry, what's the movie called?
1 Hour, the first one, I think, the 1 Hour Fantasy Girl. I think I
1 Hour Fantasy Girl, right. And the second one was Memories of a Lost Love. And it's a slow burn. When I say it's a slow burner, it's a drama. but it really is one of the movies that at the end I think is just. I remember when we premiered it, and everybody in the theater, there was like 300 people in the theater, 250, 300 people. They were just in silence. They were kind of shocked at the ending, and sort of because it was both poetic and tragic at the same time, in my view. But I dedicated that movie to my mother when it came out, because in some ways it was sort of, it wasn't a reflection of her, but it was also about, I believed that when I called it Mother's Red Dress, I was asked one time, what is the significance of the dress and the red? And I said, well, I said, it's the death of lies and the birth of truth at the same time. And it was a new beginning for that man to realize what had happened to him and that he was never going to let himself forget again. The other movies, Mark's Secret to Eternal Life, is probably really relevant now, other than just that it's dealing with dark themes about a man who's 155 years old. He was a slave, was given a new life by a man who pulled him into another dimension where he was never born. And he begins to learn that every year he will have to kill someone that he loves in order to keep living. And then he encounters this boy whose life he saves. And the boy, he has to teach him how to survive as he was taught. But then he starts to realize that he's not wanting to keep doing this, and that he was afraid of dying and afraid of pain all his life. It's a really interesting, I mean, it's not just that about that movie. There is so much to that film. It's about choosing your own path and what you consider to life to be, and what eternal living is. I did another one called A Nice Quiet Life, which was once called A Young Man's Future. It's a gay independent film, but it's not gay. I know today it would be, I'll just tell you this: the GLAAD and HRC, the Human Rights Campaign, and I'm not making this about them, but they both rejected this film when it came out. In 2015, they rejected it because of identity politics, but really what they didn't want to talk about was about mental health in the homosexual community. I understand that why now, but this was about a movie about two young men in their senior year of college falling in love, and one of them developing schizophrenia, and the decline in that person, and that the person who we experience this through Jeremy's view, Scott, is someone that he loved and who loved him, but that person was no longer there anymore. So it was about love becoming something else, about care and beyond romance and passion and desire. It had to do with, what would you do if you were thrust into a situation where the person that you met and fell in love with no longer could recognize you in moments that were almost dangerous to you in some respects. And it's got, I mean, all of these films have really, I think, touching ends to them, but because they're not all neatly wrapped up in a little bow, but they're not all down either. It's sort of like a mixed ending. Last two, Game Day and Child's Voice. Child's Voice came in 2017 after I learned about human trafficking of children. It is probably our most well-known and popular movie of all time right now. And that one really dealt with the trafficking of children, not just underage, but little children. And it deals with the satanic aspects of that reality. But the beauty of it, I believe, is in the voice of the child and the inner child's voice in all of us. And it's about when we will listen and wake up to the one inside of us. It's about choices and the road to redemption through love and courage with truth and conviction, and risking your life in some ways, not as a martyr, but as a state of your being. it's an invitation to the beginning of that voice. And so if you were comparing it between that and Sound of Freedom, which is coming out, we talked about this. Sound of Freedom is a very different kind of film. It is a narrative drama thriller, but Child's Voice is more supernatural, and it's about this concept of the child's soul. And Sound of Freedom is more about that world and the world of, rescuing and traffickers and all of that, whereas ours is more intimate, and it's based on a similar kind of love story between a girl and a boy and this child who brings them together, and then they stand up for that child. And then the last one was Game Day. I did that in 2021. It came out in 2022. It's probably our least known, but it's a deep film about family, about narcissism, and about healing. And it's all about an Italian-American family from Philadelphia who gather together on their Sunday, their sacred Sunday of the Philadelphia Eagles, playing their most hated rival, the Dallas Cowboys. And over 4 quarters of football, the family begins to descend into all of its secrets coming up and being spoken for the first time by everyone in the family. And it starts to break the family apart when people say what's true, but don't have the answer. They don't have the answer to deliver on what it is that they're saying. And so the real healing begins when people begin to admit the truth to themselves about who they are, what they are, and what they really care for and love. And it's about, games come and go, I guess you could say. And there's winners and losers, but really the winners pick up and keep playing another day. So those are our films. There's another one right now, Little Box of Hope, that's being made in South Carolina by Edgar and another producer. I'm not really involved with that film, but that is a film that was based on a script that we had tried to get made a long time ago. And it's, I don't know what the script is now, but it was a really beautiful story about using your imagination to create love in the darkest places. So.
Oh, Karina asks, where do we see these movies?
So if you go to norestrictionsent.com, you can look them up there. There's also No Restrictions Studios, South Carolina. They have them all on there. There's Vimeo, there's Tubi, there's Roku, there's Apple. Trying to think of all the platforms. We're on multiple platforms in the United States and other countries. But if you go to the website No Restrictions ENT, you can at least see it on Vimeo there. You can rent it for $3.99 or $2.99, buy it for $9.99. If you've got Tubi, you can look up any one of the titles on there. I think Tubi has almost all of our titles on there. Yeah, and Roku as well. Roku has almost every single film on there as well. And I know there's other platforms out there, but I just don't know them all by name.
If you subscribe to the Tubi or the Roku, is there still a fee, or like how some of the platforms, if you're subscribed to the platform, you get to watch whatever the platform on, whatever movies you are, kind of like that Netflix model?
Yeah, it's free. Like, I mean, you could, so we have ones that are, obviously you can buy and download to stream and own, but like Tubi, if you're subscribed there, it's free and it's just with ads. That's it. There's just ad breaks. Roku, I think it's the same. A lot of our stuff that's streaming for free is with ads, for that platform. We don't put the ads on there. They do. And then there's other ones that are subscription based that you pay a premium and then you can watch it uninterrupted.
Angeline's asking, do you know much about borderline personality disorder or silent BPD?
So yes and no. I don't know all of the specific characteristics. What I would say is that I've encountered a lot of different types of people in my lifetime. And I've also done my own self-examination. And actually, I will I just want to say this before getting further into that. What I consider mental illness, as I've come to understand it, is evil, is mental illness. Everything else is mental wellness and can be treated as long as there's not a malignant narcissist behind that. And I learned that the hard way. So with borderline personality disorder, I had traits of bipolar, bipolar disorder. I was a defensive, reactionary narcissist, if you will. I wasn't overt, cruel, attacking somebody. I had a little bit of schizophrenia in there, or schizo. See, my mother in my childhood with her, it was highly programmable that I was in dissociative states. So I have traits of a lot of things that I've had to heal, psychopathy. And when I say that, that sounds crazy, but I'm talking about where the heart feeling is blocked. It's almost like it's not. I do believe people are conditioned to a point where they're incapable of changing on some level, and in the way that society would need them to. But when I look at these disorders and whatnot, it's the awareness and the care that overcomes most of the phenomena. It's just a matter of reintegrating that into nature and people and animals and that sort of thing. So to answer Angeline's question directly, no, I do not know the distinctions of them, but I understand the phenomena of them. How about that? You know?
Why do you think in this day and age that we're in right now, so many people have like this Messiah complex? People believing that they're the one, met some people believing that they're Jesus, they're here to save things, actually trying to prove to everyone or that they're the way. And if people listen to them, all of humanity will be saved. And, there's some people believe that they're Archangel Michaels. I've met a few of them, a few Jesuses, even though people that think they're Lucifer and have bloodlines back to King David and think they're here to rule the next throne. So in the work that I'm doing, I come across quite a few characters that really believe this stuff. Like it's not just that, they're trying to convince, maybe some are, but in most cases, they truly believe that they are the ones here to save this earth.
So you're wanting to know what causes that?
What's your thoughts on that? What causes it? Why do you think so many people, I think the world is in so much shambles or problems that people want to save things. So maybe they feel they need to adopt that role, but they truly have that belief that they're Jesus.
Right. Okay. So, God, we could open up the door about cults. We could talk about addiction. We could talk about all this. What we're talking about on the awakened level and where you're seeing all this phenomena the model that I see, and it's very nuanced, but it's all there. We're in a childhood trauma system that we have normalized a psychopathy, which is basically a lower and diminished psyche, a healthy ego, healthy central ego. And we have created objects of attachment and rejection outside of ourselves as metaphors of the internal paradoxes which we come into being through our conscious and unconscious selves. This is all in my head. What we have done is we have taken children and their value and inverted it like we talked earlier. But what that really means is this: there isn't a child on this planet born who will not be denied love. From the darkest of places to the most enlightened. And that shouldn't say that. We are all children in our core seeking love, acceptance, and validation. How we go about doing those things is the problem. The problem is that you're waking people up from a psychopathic, mechanical thought process world, and you're trying to bring them into a quantum spiritual understanding like that. And it's going to create enormous friction, because everyone going into spirituality, and I'm not declaring anybody false, okay? Just understand that this is going to, we have no idea what we're really coming into is a world of cults and beliefs that will eclipse it. It's similar to what happened 2,000 years ago, if you want to extrapolate from that. But why? And I actually had direct experience with somebody who told me their story, and I go, that's exactly what I saw. So I said to a lady sitting at a bar a year ago who was an atheist, I said, okay, totally understand all of your arguments and agree with most of that. What if everybody in this, but this is my question to her, I posed to her, what if everybody in this restaurant and bar here is Jesus Christ but doesn't know it? And she just looked at me like, now, what I mean by that is there's the original, and then you're the emulation of that. It's not an imitation. You're part of that same blueprint. Okay. When you get into people who are claiming to be all of these different things, what that is that's a child who is wanting to feel loved and special and found a place within themselves where they could feel distinctive, separate from the rest of the world. And the truth is, in this crazy, chaotic stance that we're in right now, everyone, everywhere, all at the same time is bringing their own childhood traumas into everything. The false world of a false light awakening. You're going to see people who have their mental, emotional, spiritual, sexual problems going into a cult where they can feel as though they're Christ and be a meth addict and sleep with other people's, husband, like sleep with other wives of people, steal from people. Like narcissists will flock to the cults to take over them. People with complex PTSD. See, your identity doesn't stop because you're told that you're wrong. In fact, this is the truth about all of us. Each one of us seeks to try to reach. So if we have a soul and we're a human, there is no human knowledge that can reach the highest understanding, but there is a soul in there trying to do so against the human's unconscious self. And when these kinds of things come up in history where we're shifting behaviors in people overnight, not just one side or the other, but together at the same time, we can't see how much we've shifted and changed. And the truth is that the part that Lucifer preys on in this situation is that there is a God and a devil in each one of us. The truth is it's the higher, quote, the inner critical voice that answers the door. That's us and God at the same time. What we're listening to is our authentic voice, not the voice of someone else, or not the voice of what our deepest ego is, to be loved and accepted no matter what. So when someone says, I am this or I am that, I take them at face value for that. That is exactly what they believe, and they are committed to living it. And because of that, they are going to believe it, and they will find other people who believe it as well. And that will make it real. So what I say to people is, why do you see this? It's because the need to feel loved and validated and special in a world that does not care for anyone. I'm not saying this, therefore that, right? But the phenomena that we're witnessing in the cults and the people that are claiming to be Jesus and this, I've had those moments myself. That's why I'm telling you this. I saw how dangerous a cult leader I could be, and the influence that I had and my authenticity and all of that. even in unconscious state, like not realizing the danger that I was putting myself and other people in. So when I pulled back and I saw how easy it could be for me to lead some, a group of people and say, we're all going to go do this, and we're all playing that game in a certain sense. When we are going into the outside world and we're needing an audience to validate us, to say, no, I am this, and you, okay, well, if you don't see, that's your problem, or that's your, that's your loss, then you're not living like Christ. You really aren't. Christ is not about an audience. Christ is about an invitation to reciprocity and a shared life. It's about being the shepherd, and the shepherd is the one that goes and finds the sheep that stray over and over and over again. So you don't condemn the sheeple. You don't sit there and persecute them and call them names and tell them that they're just too stupid to be, without their care. Like, you're basically creating a codependency and being an authority for someone to define things for them, what they are, what they're thinking, what they're feeling, what that is. And the truth is that it doesn't matter what any of those things, those are all just definitions and words. The real meaning, the real you, is not describable into words. It's not a movie that you could write and then give that whole understanding to someone and just hand it over to them and go, here, that's my whole life. You'll get it. It's impossible. This is the drama of God that we're in. Words mean something, but at the same time, it's subjective to the individual who's perceiving them. And like, if I could talk about all these great ideas for hours and hours and hours, and there'll be people that'll come on the call and say, oh my God, this guy gets everything. And they go, this guy's too crazy. And it's like, yes, because what he's saying, what she's saying, what we're all saying is we came to that from our own understanding. My own lived experience brought me to understand life this way, believe the things that I believe, know that I could be a really dangerous, unaware person that could lead, people over a cliff, thinking I'm doing the right thing because mommy said I was special. That's where I know this sounds silly, but that's where all of this stuff goes. That's why these spaces could be infiltrated on people, having their thoughts, the way they've constructed them, and their beliefs that feel as real to them as yours does to you, and going, no, I'm not Jesus. I know I'm not. And I'm okay with that, right? I don't have to be Jesus. If you're Jesus and you go and you do all these great things and you sacrifice yourself, but see, this is the thing. It's like, there is no need to do any of that. There's no need. Like, I was talking to a couple of friends of mine the other day. I'm like, okay, so we got a Matthew, a Mark, a Luke, and a John. I know a Thomas, and I said, you know what? We could just be in a philosopher's corner for an hour, and all of a sudden, world happens, and then here we are. I'm Christ, you're the disciple. You know what I mean? Like, it's all the story is recreated again. You could create that in your head and make it real. I want to say one thing about this. This is a side topic, but it's the same principle. So I have a friend of mine who's a psychologist. She's a really based person, and she said, I'm taking time off, and I'm going to go. And she's Canadian. She's just a person that I like to confide in some thoughts sometimes. And she was telling me about this trip that she was going to take down to Arkansas, and there's this church there that a guy who claims to be Elvis, okay, out of the witness protection program, he's got his backstory down. He's got it all locked down, right? So he is fulfilling the thing that the king said that he wanted to do at the end of his life, which was to be a preacher of a church and bring Christ to people. Real story. Like, so this matches up with all of Elvis's real life. And this guy comes onto the stage and he's in the church, and he's got an entire congregation. People travel all over the world, come see him there. He talks like Elvis. He looks like Elvis. He acts like Elvis. He thinks like Elvis. He walks like Elvis. He is Elvis Presley to these people. And he's Elvis Presley to himself. And here's the thing, Jesse, and this is why things are crazy, is because he believes it so strongly, whether he is or he is not, he is to them. And the reason why she was going was not because, you know, her reason for going was quite complex. But I said, you know what, this tells me something that's so amazing. The reason why people keep coming back and going to that church is not because it's a tourist thing. It's a real experience that's authentic to them. And they experience something spiritual in that space together. And that, to me, is the power of God. Because although by proxy and maybe by metaphor and maybe by illusion, the fact is that it's the same metaphor to what we're witnessing now, with the beliefs in the structures that are dissolving before our very eyes, and those beliefs are collapsing along with them. And then we get to what's really on the inside, what's really underneath the facade. And so when you're talking about a man who believes himself to be, and the people that believe themselves to be witness to that man, it becomes an authentic experience that is felt and can't be denied by those who are there. And that's really what we're talking about when we go on the grand scale of things. It's like the beliefs that the world was this way, obviously they're fading for some, and others not in the same time and space. But as those illusions fall, the attachments to those beliefs also fall. And where we are plugged in emotionally, mentally, and spiritually to them, those parts that die also die in us as well. There are going to be more people who die from this time of a broken heart than anything that can be measured. And it won't show up as that being the diagnosis, but it's basically people giving up on hope, because this is an eternity for them of trauma and pain and suffering that they can't get out of. What it does is it's throwing everybody back into their childhoods in that traumatic state where there was no finite end to it. So what I was talking about a couple of years ago, what these people do to children, they do to every single one of us by effect of who they are. They will put you in an eternal state of anguish, despair, and hell. And that's where they get you so that you can't become creative. And what we're talking about is there are going to be two distinct societies, and then there's going to be sub-societies within those two distinct societies. And that is one that is more mechanical and less sentient. And then there's going to be the divine, but then there's going to be in between everything else. And that's really the world that we're fighting against, is the one that conditions the mind to believe that it is a less than position and a reductionist position and a scientific position, versus a divine one that eclipses all of man's knowledge. And it says, I know what's best for me. I'm taking my authority back. I'm taking my birthright back, and I'm putting it into all of the things that I love. And it's going to create that energy outward, and it's going to draw that energy towards it. That's what we're dealing with here, and the discovery of ourselves in that process, which is going to be for everyone. But in terms of how it will end for everyone, that's really what we don't know. What the final result will be, not just in a finite time, but in a world without end.
You mentioned a lot of people are losing hope and, going to be going through that. At the same time, when you were saying that, Rose was asking the question, are you hopeful for the world? So I thought that was kind of wild at that same time that you were saying that a lot of people losing hope. What about yourself? What's your, thoughts about the world?
Yeah. So there have been periods where I've really felt and saw, and I would go through a process with anybody if they wanted to really know what that meant. But to see the depth of the trauma, it's not the stuff that's obvious, it's the stuff below the surface that will then become more relevant as time goes on. So am I more hopeful for the world? Yes, I am. And the reason why is this. What you have to remember is all that you're presented with in terms of the choices on television and on social media is designed to be inflammatory, taking minor events that occur among a small group of people and amplifying them out there into the world. So when you pare down all of the news and you pare down all of the information, you have what's outside your door. And where is all of that information that you're receiving relevant to what you're seeing outside your door? It's almost a fraction. If there is any hell right outside of your door, it's usually not what's on the news. So, in other words, you have to be able to understand that the world is still holding together in spite of all of this disarray that's been created, these distractions, and that the majority of people want to feel loved, safe, and be cared for. That is our greatest superpower. The powers that be can only offer you a falsehood of that, an imitation of it, an empty promise of it. They can speak the language of it, but you can only be taken in. Let me put it more gently this way. Agendas do not work unless they're in you. The words of the WEF and Klaus Schwab and all these other people who are saying all these things, they don't mean anything at all unless you believe they're real and true. And you can't be taken over by an agenda unless the agenda is in you to be codependent, psychologically primed and wired to wait for them to tell you what to do or how life is going to be. In other words, the WEF could be demolished tomorrow, but their agendas will live on in the minds of people who believe that that is the solution. So it's not just this governing body, it's our collective conscious, unconscious selves that are carrying those things out. So where am I hopeful? I'm hopeful in the fact that a majority of people who are, quote, waking up to the knowledge of the world have a new baseline to operate off of. Okay, so it's not settled, but at least you go, okay, I've determined that this part over here of reality is false. It doesn't serve me anymore. So I can start there. Now I have to go, okay, what's true? There is something opposite of what the falsehood is that's true. And it may not be the side that is in opposition to it, but it's going, what is universally true for all of us? The majority of people will join you there. Think about it like this. If you looked at political movements, and I don't like to get into this detail, but it's not the arguments. It's what politics is as a coalition that you have to form of ideas, right? To gather different groups of people around a diversity of ideas that speak to where they are in their minds and in their space. They go, and so if I look at like scale it down and I go back into LA and I'm there with the Bernie Sanders group in 2015, 2016, everybody felt good because they found each other. You see, everybody was there going, this has nothing to do with socialism, communism, or Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders was just a conduit. Trump was a conduit to this wave, to this movement of consciousness. They are there to capture it and anchor it into a system that you vote on. That's what it is. That's what it's there for. It's a highly programmable time between now and 2024. If there's even going to be an election, I don't think so. And I'm not going to participate in it whatsoever. I'm not putting my vote into something that I am going, this is Charlie Brown and Lucy, where she goes, okay, I'm going to hold the football for you this time. And she yanks it away at the end. And they've been doing that to you over and over and over. They did it to you with Ross Perot. They did it to you in 2000. They did it to you in 2004. They did it with Ron Paul twice. They did it with Bernie Sanders twice. They did it with Donald Trump. So it's like, I'm just talking about if you want to go with that story. But again, all of these choices were false choices to begin with because we gave our power away for them to decide how I'm going to feel about my life and the world that I live in. Holy, really? At this point, I've got to have a daddy out there to protect me because, you know, if Trump was president right now, we wouldn't have all these problems. Well, what if we did? Well, we would feel so much better than having Biden in them. Do you see how mad this is? It doesn't change the problem. The problem is still there because the problem is in us. We're doing this to ourselves on a macro, micro level. It's insane. It's really insane. This ritualized, like, we got to go through this process again to figure out where we're at. And it's like, okay, you have to let go of things that you can't control. You really, really have to understand, like, where I have hope for the world is in the acceptance that there isn't an answer in that sphere. There isn't an answer out there that I'm going to somehow find, and the waters are going to part, and the sky is going to turn bright white, and all of a sudden we're going to see that, oh, well, that might be the end of the world. You see? Oh, that's what it was all about. We got off the planet. We're all gone. We're in spirit now. Feels kind of good. I don't know. I don't know if that's what it is. But the thing is, it's like, well, it's this, and it's this, and it's this, and this person says this, and somebody says this over here, and then this is happening. Oh, yeah, my God, things are happening. Yes, things are always happening. It's always happening, but it's on a selective, small group of people dealing with little stories that they make a national debatable thing. What they did with COVID, they've been doing with everything. They are taking what's should have been your freedom of choice, your free will, and then they said, this person over here is 350 pounds, and you who are nutritious, you're the same. You both need the jab because you're both unhealthy. And I'm going, no. I don't consent to any of that. That is not even science. That's not even sound science. That's not even medicine. Because nobody would sit there and say, oh, you're healthy because you got this thing, even though you live a gluttonous life. I'm not declaring this on all people. People have had bad food, bad air, bad water, bad everything, and it's made their bodies inflamed. Such to the level now, you don't even have to eat a lot to get inflamed. So this whole, to answer Rose's question, do I have hope for the world? Yes, I do. But you have to get solid within yourself to say, I'm not going to allow the encroachment of this information and the things that are going on there that they want me to pay attention to and are gaslighting the hell out of me for, to somehow go, I've got to put my team cap on and my jersey on again and go, this is what we play for, every year. There is no solution out there in this system and knowledge that could be reconciled. You could have a Deus Ex Machina event. You can have a Sky event. You could have all sorts of things that would bring people together. 9/11 brought this country together, and then they went off to war. So the point being is that psychologically, yes, could people come together? Sure. Could there be a time for world peace? Yes. But did we really solve what was going on underneath inside of ourselves? Or are we still looking outside for the Savior to come and make it all better for us so we can feel okay and safe? This is what adults have to become. We need the good men and women of this world to come forward and just be the model that they already are and live it, rather than worry about what this person over here is doing and what you can't control in that person over there. It's like, yes, it's maddening. They made it all debatable. They took health, they weaponized it. They took a virus that didn't really even affect the majority of the population, let alone kill them. And then they created the fear and the panic and the terror of all the people who were malnutritioned and had comorbidities, and they just put them on a death camp. Give me those numbers. Give me those cases. Give me those deaths, right? And just report them as though it's just killing indiscriminately everywhere when there's so much cognitive dissonance to say, well, wait, on the one hand, you're saying this, but on the other hand, you're like not. And here we are 3 years later, and it's not a story that anybody can straighten out because everybody's been programmed with fear. That's psychological warfare. It's creating creating and this is what happened. Sarah Westall talked about this. 6 months. If you program somebody with 6 months of fear, terror campaign, if that same host comes back, let's say Rachel Maddow, Tucker Carlson, you pick whatever flavor you want, and then all of a sudden that person starts telling the truth. Guess what? They're not going to be believed by the people who believe the lie, because the lie was believed because it was fear, and the fear of suffering and the fear of dying, with the threat of that, with the scarcity of it, and the ignorance of not knowing who we were and who was talking to us all this time, who was basically saying, we're going to kill you. It's just a matter of time. But here was the conspiracy that we all knew was going to come. And then it happened. And then it took over the world and changed the world with a lie. And so my whole thing is, people are done with the lies. They may believe a new story and a new lie, but the truth is that the truth that you live is the lie that they won't be able, they won't fall victim to a lie when you have the truth. And you don't have to argue it, and you don't have to sit here and tell everybody your story as though you know what it is. You come at it and go, there's a lot I don't know, but I also know what works for me, and what works for me over here does no harm to anybody else. The first rule of this: do no harm. Every human being that is here, is very hard to be a human being. And when you do no harm and you understand that it's very hard to be a human being, you will create a world that everybody wants to live in. Truly. Because this idea with going with AI and business, there's a lot of risks in it. But one of the things is this: the corporations are not going to stop poisoning you. They're just going to poison you at a more effective rate. They'll be able to trim off a lot of the fat that causes a sluggish and slow campaigns. They'll be able to predict things in the future ahead of state, because all the people that they're going to message to are going to be on that blockchain, and they're going to know every single pressure point of every single thing that those people want and want to do. So they can go, AI, give me the top 10 toys that are going to be hot retail sellers this Christmas, and AI can go and do that, and companies will scale to build that in order to capture the collective at that moment. Is we're talking about an imitation of the AI that we are, if you want to look at it. It's to try to eclipse our own minds without feeling anything in our heart, and that's where God comes in and is not going to let his creation be destroyed. I'm not going to go down without a fight, but I'm not going to fight them. I'm going to fight to live. I'm going to fight for what I believe is real and what I love about people, and I love about myself.
Hope, Love, and Joy came in here and asked 4 questions, kind of basic on the same premise. I don't know if what you're saying maybe kind of had something to do with this question, but I'm going to ask all 4 questions and then, see your response. So his last one was, the WEF doesn't agree with do no harm. How do we save the children? And he said, question, what can we do to stop Agenda 2030? He said, what can we all do to stop the WF, WHO, NATO, BRICS, UN, Vanguard, and BlackRock? And then his first question was, what would you suggest we all do to save the children?
Okay, let me take the first one. What do we all do to save the children? So I mentioned in my video that I did years ago that you need to get involved locally in your sheriff's office, your city council. But I'm going to take this a step further. There was a lady, her name is Star, and she was a former trafficked victim. She's also a mother with children. She's up there in the West Coast, and was trying to get the city council on board to do events around trafficking, to bring awareness to it. She had a whole play. She had a whole thing that she wanted to do. And we talked about this, and she got a lot of pushback. They would get to a certain point, they're all excited about it, and then it was like, nope, can't do that, sorry, for whatever reason. She had suspicions about it. I asked her, I said, okay, what is your end goal about what do you want to accomplish out of all of this awareness? Right? She said, I want a solution. I said, okay, what's the solution? She says, I have a house that I want to buy and I got land on it. I want to get a farm and a horse ranch. And I want to have rooms in that house to house women who are coming out of their trafficking so that they can heal and reintegrate and develop a sense of dignity, get their humanity back. I said, that's exactly what you need to focus on. That's the solution. You go and build it. You show it can be done. It's done. It's over. There's no more arguing. How many more of these city council do you want to build? These women are now productive women in society again. They're not needing treatments, co-payments, have addictions, have to get on methadone, whatever. You see what I mean? If you want to stop the WEF and all these other, you have to create solutions that bring us back into humanity. If you want to start in VR and technology as a bridge, you can reach people with healthcare and trauma healing in VR. There's people doing that right now. I was working with a group, a husband and wife who have DNA, that should actually be on your show, DNA frequency healing through music and psychedelic art, and it synthesizes the effects of that and actually heals your DNA structures and your mind and body.
Wow.
And they're creating a center where portions of the NFT sales, okay, so they have NFTs for sale. Those sales of those NFTs would be bought up by somebody, let's say, who had like $100,000 or $50,000 or $10,000 or $1,000, whatever. Portion of each sale goes into what I would call a cooperative, but it's like a university, if you will, to train the next generation of musicians and visual artists to create their own entity that can go out and expand on this field in a scientific frequency-based training with their art. And what it means to make it a safe world for all children is the one that your child, your own inner child, would want to live in. So don't visualize it for other kids and just protecting them. But really, your child has to come out and play in the world. You have to reimagine things. You have to use the muscles that have not been used in a long time. And with the WEF and all of this, can they be stopped? Can they be stopped? No, they cannot be stopped because they've got trillions of dollars invested. You are talking about multinational forces on the level that are, they're when I say they're too powerful, they're not. We are the real value and we're more powerful than they are, but in their world, okay? The reverse of the flow back to us is us not going, okay, I guess I have to live in my little tiny corner over here and can't do anything. That's where a lot of people will feel powerless. But the truth is that you have to exercise your own free will and your own creative power and say, okay, I can't. Luke Skywalker, here's what it is. I'm just going to say it like this. Luke Skywalker in Star Wars, A New Hope, was the farm boy who wanted to go and join the rebellion and take down the Empire, right? He was going to go, and he was just like, he had heard the stories and all of these great people that were standing up to the evil Empire, and he saw that that they were out in space and they were dominating all these planets, and they had all their outposts everywhere, all over the galaxy, right? They just reigned with total and complete impunity. There was no one to resist them other than the rebellion. So he wants to go start that, and then all of a sudden the Empire comes to his doorstep, kills his last of his family, and he's thrust into a whole other reality, steps into a reality with an older man who knew his father. There's a little mysticism here, and then he's teaching about the Force and taking him on this adventure. And then he gets a victory after losing his mentor, but he pledges to go after Darth Vader after that. He's going to seek out Vader, the person that is just the epitome of all evil in the world, and confront him and defeat him and win for the rebellion. And what happens is a total case of inversion. Everything that he wants to have happen goes wrong. He takes all of his hatred and his fear and his anger into Vader, just focuses on the fact that this man is just the incarnate of evil, and then he learns that it was his father, which is the reveal of that. But the Return of the Jedi, the third one, he's confronted with the fact of accepting that Darth Vader is his father, but he can't kill him. So he has to figure out another way, meaning he learned what happened when he got provoked by his fear and his anger and his hatred. He almost became the very thing he didn't want to become. So then he has the Emperor try to provoke him while holding on to this belief that his father is good and can be turned to the good side again, right? But from your and I's standpoint, there's no observable behavior that this man has ever exhibited that would tell you that that's true, right?
Or possible.
Or possible. But Luke didn't give up on that belief. And because he didn't and did not relinquish himself to take aggression when he had the chance to kill him with the cause to do it, he stopped and pulled himself back and saw where he was different. And what he was doing in that moment was to honor his father as well, because he said, I am a Jedi like my father before me. He was reminding him of before the Emperor came along and corrupted him, he was a good man. Now, this is not about arguing with these people that they are good and can be turned. But the reason why Luke Skywalker won, he did so without killing anyone. He stood up for what was true. Harry Potter stood up for what was true against Voldemort. Aslan stood up for what was true in C.S. Lewis, The Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe. These are heroes with 1,000 faces in Joseph Campbell's archetypes that when you read them and you understand when he's talking about the center of the universe is you, in your center of your universe. Everyone in their infinite consciousness that they are is in their own center of their own universe, whether they don't know it or not. See, the realization that you have power and influence in the subtlest of ways is all in what you materialize out of here. So you're talking about manifesting, people talk about this all, the law of attraction. This is the quantum field that is the Holy Spirit and that you draw towards you. So if you have conflicting thoughts and feelings, you're going to draw that towards you. You're going to manifest that. It's not a mechanical answer as everybody says it. Well, if you do this and do, yes, you can create manifesting law of attraction. You can create it through manipulative forms and you'll get that delivered back to you. It's not like you get to, manifest and just take advantage of people and have no consequences or karma. So what we're really talking about is other potentials that have to exist in you in order for them to be defeated. Yes, the WEF and UN is legalized. How do you stop the sex trafficking? Okay, specifically this normalization of pedophilia is not going to be won by stopping the UN and the WEF. What it is you have to draw a line and say our children are not for sale. They do not need this energy around them. You have to put laws up. You're going to have to fight this if it comes to you or move away from it. Some places like San Francisco and others in LA and stuff, they're going to do everything they can to protect and give sanctuary to a lot of these people. They've codified it into law. It's going to take the citizens of the United States to stand up to the local city councils and others and not give in. Meaning you can't, this is the thing, you can't hold a protest on a weekend and do a rally and everybody get all excited and then go back and serve the system and think we made real change today. No, these people don't answer to anything other than balance sheets and donors until they're exposed for the frauds that they are. And you all have to stop listening and complying with it. But the key is, and I'm just going to tell you, this is the truth about this to the gentleman that asked this question. They have created such a situation with this pedophilia, transgenderism, and I'm not going to get into it because it's a dense conversation, and no one has all of the answers. I can tell you because I know from my own lived experience. You can't. No one can separate the agenda from the people, and it's just all blending together now, and it's going to be a mess. So there's going to be anti-LGBTQ zones all over the world in different parts, in different cities and towns, and then there's going to be sanctuary. Because people don't understand what's happened. They have been infiltrated by malignant narcissists. These communities, these things that we believed in were good at the time, and they've been infiltrated over the last 12 years, roughly. But you're going to have to live with the fact that they've created this situation that there's going to be a martyr. There's going to be a transgender martyr. And they're going to try to bring back the Stonewall Inn riots here in the United States and elsewhere in the world when a person is murdered, because what they have done is they've agitated all of the childhood traumas in everyone for 7 years at an accelerated rate with our pornification of the culture before. So when you talk about, pedophilia, we've been on a long way to get here. And let me explain this. Weimar Republic decline. The Weimar Republic decline that brought in Hitler in 1933. In the cabarets, they had gays and lesbians. This is the artist district, okay? They had gays and lesbians. They had bisexual. They had non-binary. They had transvestite. And then they had pedophile and bestiality. At the end of the Weimar Republic, when hyperinflation had hit and there's pretty much practically no meaning and everything is a nihilistic state for the most part, people's worst behaviors came out and they started having orgies. So human history has to, when I say this, human history has to play out in psychology because that's what enables history. We are in cycles and loops of time that are psychological, and they are on a timeline of forces that are beyond our control, but also ones that have to be played out. So when we're talking about this, that there will be somebody that's more than likely killed innocently or not, and that person will be virtuized and promoted to a level of sainthood to that community. And it's really not something that we want to go down, but it's inevitable that someone will get hurt because the pain and the trauma. Okay, I'm not going to go into this in detail, but what we're watching is the canary in the coal mine. The people that are yelling and shouting and screaming to the hilt about how unsafe they feel in this world is also how unsafe we feel. They're expressing it in their own time and space, as are we. So we're just as equally as afraid as they are. But the truth is that that's a highly programmable and suggestible state. So any insertion of thoughts and ideas, the bottom line is everybody sees themselves as the hero in their own story, including the narcissists. And you can't talk somebody out of how they feel. So to answer that man's question, you can't stop what I was saying earlier about the agendas. The agendas are in you and they're awakened in you with concepts that are given to you, but it's a feeling that you have inside. So you can't stop how people feel who've been told that this is why it is they feel that way. And they don't see what they're being deceived by. So this is where you have to take it at a higher level of, to me, the truest, highest Christian ideals is Jesus, which Jesus would be with. I know this is going to sound crazy. Jesus would be with all of the transgender. He did say that for pedophiles, it would be better if a millstone had, around their neck and then they threw themselves in. That doesn't mean we go and do that, by the way. He didn't say, oh, and by the way, you should go, because you're not going to be able to deter the worst of the worst from the crime because they don't see themselves as that person who got arrested or who got executed. A psychopath does not have the ability to reason like everybody. This is everybody in the entire world for that matter. Everybody makes a distinction of themselves as separate from the other. The same is true among criminals. They do. They're like, well, I don't do that. You know, I don't kill children. At least I didn't hit you. At least I don't beat you. Right. I mean, that's kind of like they're saying, I don't do what that other freak over there does. That's really the problem. And what you're going to get with this too is the same thing that you get. What I just said is that minor attracted persons are distinguishing themselves from pedophiles right now. They're saying pedophiles are straight people like priests who molest boys, and you're Christian. It's all a whataboutism. It's a here, there, therefore this. It's basically giving themselves an excuse. I watched a thread of a person who identified as a minor attracted person going off on like if you took out those variables and just listened to them argue, you'd think, wow, they're getting therapy. There's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it, and that the real predators are these people over here. And it was just like, oh my God, this is no different than anybody else. It just happens to be that it's about this particular issue, and it's so abhorrent to people, which it should be. But this person it's their lived experience, and it's how they feel, and it's how they've been conditioned, and it's the emotional reality of their childhood. Actually, that's really what it is. There's no person, let me be very clear about this. There is no person on this planet that consciously chooses to do such things to themselves or anybody else. And if you talk about chemical castration, that's another one. I'm going to just tell it to you like this. Karmically, we are not going to get out of any cycle by doing more blood rituals. We commit more blood rituals. We are just filling that space. So what does that mean? You put that person away and you take them out of the view. Like you if they're unreformable, if that's what you want to believe, but I don't even think that's something we need to go down right now. If that person is a real danger, they need to be taken away from everyone else, and they need to sit in a prison of their own sins for the rest of their life, to face themselves, not for the society to come along and go, well, they've changed and reformed. It's like, no, you did something horrible. You need to be able to sit with that and think about that for the rest of your life. Versus this eye for an eye. If you see the psychopath, this is the truth. The psychopath is going to prove to you that you're no different than they are. So if you commit an act of murder and violence, like we're going to see happen in the streets here, everybody says, oh, I'm not like that. I'm not violent. I'm not violent until you are. You want revenge against people that you don't even know? Yeah, you got a problem. I'm sitting here going, okay, look, everyone has to figure it out for themselves. Here's the truth about my life. If my mother and father were not my mother and father, and I read about the story of this boy that they abused, and I put that out there as a news story, and I showed their mug shots, right? My parents, people call for them to be killed, castrated, made an example out of. I came to love my mother and father unconditionally in this time. That was the part that was beyond my imagination, and that God gave me the ability to do that, and did it authentically to the point where I cried my eyes out. I don't know how many times. And I felt her in my heart, and I felt him in my heart. And when I say God brought me back to my father, it wasn't just a simple event. I had a progression to get back to my dad before he died, saw him on his deathbed, loved him unconditionally, and gave him the best service for his funeral that I could ever give, with all the care and love for that man, because I knew that this is no one's plan A. This world and our lives are nobody's plan A. And when that doesn't mean that, oh my God, that makes it okay. No, I'm talking about everybody has to be responsible for what they do. But I'm talking about where real forgiveness is, where real compassion is for that child that didn't have a free will choice. They did make shitty choices for me as a child that cost me dearly, but I would do it all over again because I never stopped loving them. I never stopped loving my mother and father. And the thing is that the pain of that, when we talk about murdering somebody, executing them, killing off that evil, you're not doing that. You're only continuing it for yourself. And you're perpetuating the necessity to punish people when the crime has already been committed. And if that's not what and if you want to go down the world of predictive programming and predictive crime, well, you're going to get that in your lifetime. So you'll be able to eliminate all the threats that potentially exist before they happen because they're able to monitor and surveil you. So if that's what you need in order to feel safe, you're going to have that option too. Just know that you, as many people who said during the Patriot Act, well, I got nothing to hide, that they look at my bank record. I'm not a terrorist. Okay, yeah, keep playing that game and you'll find out that you don't get to determine what kind of threat you are. They do. They figure out what you are. And I know that I will not be invited to come to the new system because of what I did when I spoke out. My name and my face are on everything. They've got all my records. They've got a profile on me that is greater than anything that I could even know about myself in terms of what they've extrapolated and contemplated and analyzed. But I can't be worried about that because that's not the world I'm going to live in my mind. I'm just saying for each person, look, there's going to be plenty of murders, killings, deaths, death penalties waged as a result of all of this. And if people cheer it on, just like they did when Osama bin Laden was supposedly executed, then you're going to find, and then look, we executed Osama bin Laden right between the second term, the end of the first and the beginning of the second term of Obama, and look at where we are in the Middle East. So my point is like, if you're just trying to find a daddy and a boogeyman and somebody to kill, and that's going to make the problem go away, I've been saying this since 2018. It's not possible. The whole thing, how do we save the children all over the world at the same time? It's going to take each person themselves to decide that and do something about it in their own time and space. You can't legislate this out all over the world just simply because people don't understand things at such a level that you may or that I may. And quite frankly, maybe they don't even want to. But I'm just saying this, there is going to be, you're never going to, Pandora's box has been opened. The toothpaste is out of the tube. It can't go back in. That was the whole point of all of this. And so when I look at all of these things, this is what I'm telling you. This is not about giving up. It's about doing what you can that's right in front of you. If you're going to try to go out there and get everybody on the same board, then okay, if you want to start a 50-state tour or a multicultural tour that lasts you 3 years, you got to find the funding for it. You got to tell people what you're going to do, what the solution. If that's what people want, if they want those kind of solutions, if that's what they feel, there's a thing that we can do. We need a caravan. We need all of these experts, and we need to go state to state, county to county, city to city. Okay, go do it. I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm just saying I'm not saying that that's the solution. And it's maddening to me, and this is not about that person who's asking that. I think it's a very valid question to ask, but it's maddening to sit here and say that we can just take all of human behavior that's always been here all this time, way before now. There is nothing new here under the sun. We have just been made to pay attention to it more closely, and that is the issue. Without this, we had these things, human trafficking, around 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Before that, we had the luxury of ignoring it. We did. We had the time and the luxury to ignore it. Somehow we've been made to pay attention to it. It's causing an effect. and it's making people sick, and it's making people angry. And so when you're talking about what needs to be done, it's like, what can you do? There's one thing I want to tell people, and maybe I'll give it to you, Jesse, in a link, is the John Rappaport speech from 2000. And here we go. I'm going to grab it here. He did this thing. It was beautiful. I'm going to walk people through. I put it in the chat for you. He was trying to basically tell people, like, walk you through how you can create things and not have to buy their reality anymore. And it's a conversation with yourself to go, what can I do? And he goes through all the progressions of people and all the excuses that people make, kind of acts it out in a very funny and humorous way that allows you to laugh. And he said, he came to the point, he says, I know it's a tough sell what I'm saying, but there isn't another way at this point. And this was what, I don't know, 9 years ago. So anyway, I haven't seen all the comments yet, but it is we're getting kind of late, and I do have to go for my my lady's son's birthday. But I do want to answer any other questions that did come up. I'll answer them quickly as best I can.
Well, so what you were saying about, we don't, to stop them, obviously we don't want to become them. I've been telling people like that, and when you were saying some of these solutions is local, we have these grandiose ideas. Let's stop the WEF. Let's rescue all the children at the same time. But I think people need to do that locally in their areas, protect the children in their areas, and focus on the solutions opposed to, stopping, this bad. If, there's people that are out there that, are saying there's no hope, they're going to come and they're going to have these 15-minute cities, they're going to kill us all. And they have that mentality, which makes it real for them.
Yes.
And then that's what they're manifesting and bringing, opposed to, we are going to come together, we are going to stop them, we are going to save the children. Having that mentality and then doing things to help facilitate that is how we stop them, but not by stopping them, by protecting, creating a better way of life, opposed to stopping evil. We have to stop the WEF. I think that that's where the mentality, shift, needs to shift for people. Let's, come together as people, opposed to stopping evil.
Right. You spend the same amount of effort and energy to fight them than you would actually. You expend more to fight them than you do to create. And so when I say that, yes, you have to stand up where you can, but if you're not creating anything, this assault will only continue. I'm saying this from a perspective of just a few years ago. I remember everybody was saying, at the end of 2020, oh, it's almost, it's over and they're done and they're finished. And like, here we are in 2023. No. All of this is psyche, human psychology. This is how they're enabling all of that to happen. This is what I'm saying. You trying to correct 7 billion people's thinking and doings because you've been made to pay attention and feel powerless, as though you're helpless to do anything, whereas before you were just as powerless before. But your real power is in creating something that you've never created before. See, before we were all at this stage of like, well, wow, we've got all of this great stuff. Go back to the 80s, the 90s, whatever, before then. I don't care if it's even 10% of the population that changes. It is not something that will stop. This is the thing. Like, we've been trained to impulsively want things to change right now, to make it stop. And that is a child. I'm serious when I say this. I'm not kidding you. we're trying to go from here to here in 0 to 60 overnight, and that's impossible. That's what these people did by shutting everything down. They took us from 60 to 0 overnight. This is the disaster. So to expect people to just, hey, you should get with the program and get it, you're going to start cults, man. You're going to start declaring people your enemy who don't see it your way. The people that you persecute and condemn today, you are creating a future prison for yourself in both your mind and for the future to legislate that as though this is the problem that we have to get a hold of. And it's like, no, the problem is us. When I read through what the agendas are and all that stuff, is like, yes, that and more will happen. How does that come to be when everybody knows what the agendas are? It's because we do nothing. This is a World War III effort that we're talking about on a scale that has never been done before in human history on a global level. And what that really means is holding up the truth and being a witness to the divine and not being there to go, I have the answers. I know what's best. That person's stupid. That person over there, I could tell you all the things I'm stupid about. I could tell you all the things that I used to do as a person before I came on your show. I'm talking about the life that I lived before, and I was incredible as shit compared to, I'm not even saying now. In other words, if John Paul Rice has to figure it out for you or tell you where to go, where the food is, where the water is, of course I can show you that. But ultimately, if you're wanting me to do it for you, that's your disempowerment. I could be dead tomorrow or today. And then what? Oh, what are we going to do? It's like the Forrest Gump scene when he's running and everybody, oh man, you're so inspiring, man. You running got me thinking one day and all that stuff. And then he gets to the end and he's been running for years and he goes, I'm tired of running. I think I want to go home now. And he goes back and everybody's like, what do we do now? Yeah. That's where most people are at. What are we going to do now? We don't have Trump. Oh, we need Trump. Oh, we need that. They will not allow, you will never get what you want when you wait on someone else to give it to you and deliver the answer to you. And it will never be in the way that you think it is. Again, someone else's own understandings in their own life for which you do not have privy and knowledge of, you are just basically projecting the best parts of yourself and the worst parts of yourself on everybody else. That's all it is. You are guessing at their psyche because you're thinking, this is how I would do it if I was him. Oh, he said the thing that I know is true. That means it's going to happen. No, it's not. It's never going to happen the way you think it will because you don't have control over other people. And if you're wanting control over people, man, you're going to be fucked up in this time. I'm just telling you, there's no mechanical solution that can solve this problem. There is no amount of information or knowledge distributed to every single person out there that is going to yield the result, the net result that everybody wants. It's you have to be that thing and do that thing and just be your damn self. And that's enough. Knowledge is power if it's acted upon. Knowing for yourself in theory what this is, what this means, what I think it could be, what it is like, I know where I speak from in the place of my knowing. It may not be your knowing. It may not be her knowing. It may not be your lived experience, as is yours is not mine. I back off and I go, I'm not telling anybody what to do anymore. As much as I'd like to, as much as I could be righteous about it and get up there and, yeah, we're going to do it, take it all back. And it's like, no, every one of those people I see out there doing that, I'm not saying they're false. I'm just saying they're talking to somebody else inside of themselves. When I hear people go, enough is enough, and it's like, yeah, everybody, yeah, and I'm like going, okay, I get it. I get the whole thing, but who are you talking to that's listening to you outside of the audience who's receptive to your message? You're not talking to the you may be talking to the WEF. You may be talking, they don't give a shit. You declaring enough is enough is like, okay, well, now what are you going to do? We're going to stop them. Okay. This can't continue. All right. What does that mean? Well, you get an angry person in there. To them, it means I'm going to do something to these people. Yeah. And then what? Well, we stopped them. Yeah, I guess. But now things are worse. You know? I mean, you basically said there was a justification for hurting this person. And you're no different than they are at that point. Because they have a justification for hurting you. You're too stupid to figure out that your creative power gets you out of all of this crap, all of it. And you have to do it through the mind and in here. And if you want alternative schools, here, look, if people want solutions, there's one website you can go to start today. Go to corysdigs.com and look up her solution series. And she's got everything that you can imagine, from finances to organic farming to how to protect yourself from the grid, how to protect yourself from, like all the things you can do. So if information and knowledge is where you want to start, go to corysdigs.com and look up her solutions series. I do have to go, but I do.
Yeah, this was great. This was great. Thank you.
I'd love to talk more, but I mean, I really would love to go and answer all the comments. So if there are questions in there that some people still have, I'll be happy to follow up with you and at least give you some resources or something that you can distribute to people, because truthfully, it's like the knowing for yourself is really what gives you your greatest strength. You don't have to believe. You don't have to read words and say, oh, the meaning is in these words. No, the meaning is in you. You give your lived experience, and the knowing for yourself of that experience gives meaning to those words. Those words speak back to you. I really appreciate you, Jesse. I appreciate your audience. I'm glad that they engage. Corey's Digs, COREYSDIGS.com. Corey's Digs. Great lady, and hell of a researcher. And she's a lot like me in certain respects. I mean, we're friends, but she's out there and doing things that are practical solutions for all. And let me say this one thing about the homeschooling. There's a whole other ball of wax to this homeschooling thing that people need to look into. And there's Luminous Education. And I would look into the podcast Expanding Reality, which I would recommend to have Brandon Thomas on if you haven't already. Brandon has a wealth of knowledge and resources of people who are at different stages of their lives, who are creating things like a new school model for children to retain their creativity rather than indoctrinate. It's not even the indoctrination, it's the structure of schooling that disrupts the flow of the child, the natural state of the child at play. And there is something there that everyone should look into where, I mean, this is going to sound kind of crazy, where children are able to read blindfolded. This is about, yeah, exactly. Expanding Reality with Brandon Thomas. It's a great podcast. He'd be an excellent guest, and he has a wealth of people around him that are doing incredible work in the fields, all the fields of science, education, the real science, the real education, the real creativity. And it's about retaining the child born in gifts to bring them up into adulthood, where you can be a productive creator and an entrepreneur rather than a drone and a slave who's got jobs and a skill, that can go and facilitate a company like a Widget. He and all these other people are wanting to build this university of diverse modalities for all these different areas. And so I would recommend your guests or your in Reality and Corey's Digs. And I think those two places are great places to start. So.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for sharing this information with all of us. Everybody in the audience, if you can share where you guys are from And then, if you have people that are close, connect with them. We have strength in numbers. Connect with the people that are around you. We've got over 100 people here watching live on our different platforms. So, just reach out to anybody that is close. So thanks again for all you're doing. You're such a beautiful human, John Paul. Appreciate your friendship. And, it's just amazing to hear you talk. You've captivated a lot of people here. And, I'm glad you're having some time off here for yourself and, working on some other things, some other avenues, to keep you, motivated and just your juices flowing in different areas. So good for you on your new journey in life.
Thank you. Just want to tell everybody, if you want to follow me on social media, I'm on Instagram, most active at No Restrictions. I think you put the links in the description. They can find me on Telegram, Twitter, and also our website. If you want to message me, again, I'm not looking for, film projects or things like this, or even to talk about the occult and whatnot. But if you're actually interested in discussing things, or have something you want to say, or just even a message, you can email me. Let me just say, actually, if you can hit me up on a direct message on social media, that'd be great. Or I'll leave my email here, johnpaulrice@gmail.com. But please just be judicious in what you send. And I will answer them, but it may take me a little while. So with that being said, I appreciate you so much, Jesse, and I thank you for this time and this opportunity.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody. This was our milestone 500th interview. So it's even just wild to even think that we've done this 500 times. John Paul was number 2 and then number 3. So he was right at the very, very beginning. So
2 + 3 is 5. So there we go. Yeah.
Up to 500. So it's just fitting to have you here for number 500. And, thanks everybody for all your likes, comments, hearts, shares, and stars. We appreciate all of your love and support. I'm Jesse Howell, your host. Please share what you thought about, this interview and share this out. Let's beat these restrictions that we're not, the shadow banning and things that we have. The more you share it out, the more you like it, the more we reach out to more and more people. So again, this was amazing. Glad spending some time seeing you and chatting with you again. Face to face is always a bonus. Tomorrow we've got Dr. Eric Naputi. He's coming back, I believe, for the 3rd or the 4th time to share what's going on in the medical field, what's happening with him. And we'll just keep enlightening anybody willing to listen, doing the best that we can to share this knowledge with, people. And hopefully you get some benefits out of, the people that we do bring on, because I definitely do. And I'm a better person every time I'm able to share some time here with someone on the missing link. So y'all take care. We'll see you next time we see you, John. And best wishes for you and your family.
Likewise. Same to you.